Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning. We do appreciate you spending your time with us. I'll do some quick introductions. I'm Andrew Sinclair. I'm the Business Development Manager for Total Water Solutions, and I'll let Josie introduce herself.
Right, I'm Josie MacArthur. I work for Total Water Solutions as a technical agent, which I've done for the last 13 years. And prior to that, I was Developer Services at Essex and Suffolk Water.
Brilliant, thanks, Josie. So today's webinar, we decided that we were going to do one on sort of when is it a repair and when is it a renewal, and this stems from a lot of sort of past experience that we've got with particularly dealing with large infrastructure that's probably aging, and trying to get the best value for our customers. So I think the best way we could start this off really is by defining the initial problem, which is, what is it, a leak or is it a burst? And when we try and define that, really what we're saying is it's a measure of severity. So a leak is something that normally will happen to a water supply or water main, and you won't know about it until more often than not you get a bill which says that you're using more water than what you think you're going to get, unless you've got something like automated meter reading on there, which is a separate subject of basically smart metering for water. Otherwise, it's a burst, and by a burst, normally that means there's kind of almost a catastrophic failure where you're going to lose pressure or you're going to lose the water to your site, at which point you're going to have an immediate issue. Someone's going to notice it pretty quickly, and it's going to come to your attention very, very quickly. So that's the difference between leak and burst. It's just a matter of severity. Now, it's pretty easy to figure out if you've got that burst, because as I've just said, you're going to lose pressure or you're going to lose water to site, at which point you've got an immediate issue. You're going to know about it. Somebody's going to bring it to your attention, and then you need to deal with it. At which point that's probably going to be some sort of emergency repair, as opposed to thinking, well, should we now renew the pipe, because you've got that immediate need and that immediate issue. When it's a leak, they can go undetected for years. I'm sure Josie can recount many tales of where we've had customers say, "Oh no, our bill's always been that," and it's like, yeah, but you've closed half the site and you've got half the people on board. Why are you using the same amount of water? And it's due to leaks, cap ends blowing off, and things like that as well, where there's still been enough pressure in the system where they've lost quite a lot of water, but they haven't really become aware of it. So that's normally how these sort of issues kind of raise their head, either through a large bill or through a loss of pressure or a loss of water. But one of the things that we do get asked a lot of questions around is sort of, is this my responsibility to fix, or is it the water company's responsibility to fix? So I'm going to bring Josie in and just say to Josie, like, could you, for the people who don't know, could you please explain sort of where the responsibility lies on sort of the mains and supplies coming into sites?
Okay, so we have two sections. You've got pipe, which we call statutory pipe, which is basically the water pipe onto site from an existing main, either in the road, footpath, down to your site boundary. Now that element and any assets linked to that, i.e. meter pits, meter chambers, if they're statutory meters, that is the responsibility of the water supplier. So within our area, it would be Essex and Suffolk Water. From your site boundary up and into the building, that's deemed as private pipe. And that's what Total Water Solutions get involved in, whether it's doing repairs, leaks, leak detection, monitoring. We do AMR, so there's quite a lot of services we can assist you on your private pipe. Obviously, when we get customers or inquiries coming in, commercial sites generally are sort of genned up to a degree on what is their responsibility. But obviously we will support where it's needed. It's the domestic new supplies whereby the customer is very confused. They just assume that the water company will actually deal with any issues on site. So what we generally try to do is work with the customer, find out if they've done any self-leak tests, which is basically isolating, making sure any taps are turned off or any spurs off are checked. And then we would then ensure that the customer has actually had, if it's just basically a high water bill, we would advise them to request the water company actually does an independent check, i.e. request a tech to go to site just to validate there's nothing wrong with the statutory pipe. No sort of network issues where there's possibly a leak on the existing main. Check the meter and meter chamber. Generally, they would then do a report back to say, no, everything on the statutory pipe is fine. This is definitely somewhere on the private, and then we would then investigate with the customer as to what is the best route of supply. But it's just giving that little bit of support, because it can be quite scary when even small, well, I'm not saying it's all large customers will know their network, but I think that is the importance if you are a larger industrial site, that you do actually know your own water supply and where it runs. So that would basically go on to reviewing your site and understanding your site. I don't know if Andy, if you want to chip in
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. I mean, it is. It obviously we're contractors, and we get variant amounts of information, and sometimes we get really good information that allows us to kind of jump onto something and be really quick about it. But we do get occasions, even for sort of some of our larger customers, who you would kind of just assume that they have like this bank of information around the assets on their site, and we'll get like a hand drawn piece of paper from the 1950s which has got water mains drawn on it, and that's what everybody uses. And then we'll be kind of like looking at it and go, but there's an office building which runs right over the top of your old existing main according to this map. It's been moved somewhere. They wouldn't have put a building over the top of it. So it really is important to understand your site. So, even if you and Josie's very right to point this out, it's we get we deal with customers from large industry, chemical works, ports, things of that nature, all the way down to sort of what we would say is almost like kind of domestic type use. So that could be things like dental surgeries, or hairdressers or barbers. That's sort of the S of the SME side of the marketplace. It's really important that you understand what you've got on site, because I always kind of refer to water as a bit like memory. So we're so used to turning on a tap and it just works. And the reason I refer it back to memory is you don't really think about your memory until it fails you, and then you're kind of like, oh, what was that thing again? You're like, me memory. And other than that, it's just the information flows. You've got it. It's always there to hand, and it's only that time when it isn't there that it kind of brings it to the forefront. And water's a bit like that. So it's really important to have a plan. And I think you know you need to understand where water comes in, because more often than not, unless you're a really large site, you've got one supply coming into your building. So you need to know where your meter is, you need to know where that supply runs, and you need to know where it comes into your building at the first point. That's the main point. The main bits of information that you need. We've actually got we did a water plan for people over the COVID period, and it was mainly to do with kind of buildings being shut, but it's probably applicable to this as well. It's on our website. It's the water plan. I'll send it out to everybody who's watching this video now. But if anybody after this is watching the video and is unsure where it is, you can drop us an email at tws@nwl.co.uk, and I'll get that sent over to you. But it really is important to understand where those pipes are. And then some of the other information that is really helpful, particularly for people like Josie, when there's generally when it's an emergency and it's kind of everything needs to happen immediately, is having all those other bits of information. So what's the pipe material? So if you've got that bit of information, that's great. Is it an old cast iron one? Is it plastic? Because if it's a leak, then it's a lot easier to find a leak on a metal pipe than it is a plastic pipe. What valves are where, or what bits of furniture have you got attached to it? Because that's how we can, sort of, you've got multiple valves on site. We can do step testing, so we can turn bits off, so we can isolate parts of the pipe, so we know where the leak is. But again, it's about understanding your site, having some sort of site diagram about it, anecdotal information, and a point of contact who really understands it. And always remember your succession planning, because that is something that we're finding quite a lot now, that over the COVID period, there's been quite a lot of people have just kind of left businesses. They've took early retirement, or it was coming up to their retirement, or they've moved to different places, and some of that information's lost. So make sure you've got like a written down plan. That's really important, and it allows people like Josie to have all that information at hand, understand the problem quicker, and to be able to offer that solution that you need to get your site back up and running, no matter what it is, whether it's a chemical works or you've got customers sat there and you've half washed their hair and you need to rinse out the rest of the suds to get that bit of the job sort of complete. So that kind of probably neatly takes us around to understanding when is the best time to repair and when is the best time to renew. You'll remember, as I said at the beginning, sometimes that is dictated by the issue that you have. So if you've got a leak, you could potentially look at that and say, well, actually, we've done some leak detection. We've found we've got multiple leaks on that run of pipe, and actually, the best solution would be to renew it. And we can support you with that. If you've got a burst, the likelihood of it is that you need that fixing immediately, and it's an emergency repair situation. Of which, if you're having that conversation with Josie, I'm sure that's exactly what she would tell you. Like, what's the problem? What's exactly happening? We've lost water to site, right? Okay, is that a big issue or is it not a big issue? Have you lost it to a toilet block that you don't lose, or have you lost it to your main production facility? There's questions that you'll be asked around that. So that'll dictate a little bit around whether or not it's a repair or renewal. Now, we've also had cases, and I'll give you a kind of an example of where we've had a customer who has a large site, big infrastructure. They wanted to renew the network, but they couldn't get it through the procurement process. And what they were left with was actually a sign-off level, which allowed them to sign off to do repairs. So we were repairing this pipe, and we kept going back to them saying, like, you need to look at renewing this. It's like you're gonna end up paying for this twice. Effectively, you're gonna repair until there's nothing left to repair. You're gonna have to renew it anyway. And it turns out that it was a change of procurement. Professionals came in, said, how much are we spending on repairs? Have we not thought about renewing this? At which point, all of us and the customer who we were dealing with was kind of like, oh yeah, they get it now. And we pulled a plan together for them. We looked at the site that they had. We broke it up into sections so that you could, depend on what your budget is, you can kind of like, well, this is the bit that's a real troublesome spot. Let's do this bit first. And we backed that up with a leak detection survey of the entire site to find out where they had little pinhole leaks or where they had leaks on bits and parts of the main. And that's been really, really successful for them, and it saved them, because I think it was one of those scenarios where if they lost production, they're losing like millions of pounds a day. Whereas the renewal was a fraction of that to get it in the right space. And I know Josie's got probably some anecdotes around this as well. So I'll hand back over to Josie.
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar to what Andy's just stated. We've got a large industrial site in Essex, and the guy that actually manages the site does actually know his network very well now. But it's a case of working with the client as to, obviously, we know what budgetary requirements are on an annual basis. This specific site, we've done everything basically on the site. We've done small leak detections, and then they themselves have the resource to do that smaller repair. We've done actual repairs that have been on an emergency basis because they've had nil supply in an area of the site. But off the back of that, we actually introduced, I think it's 4 or 5 year program now, of actually slip lining the whole site in sections. Obviously, this can be very, very expensive for a site, even if you've got large incomes coming in. So to work with them on a program basis that they can do a section by section, continue if there's any repair requirements. But we've also got automatic meter readers on site that the guy that actually manages the water network can then isolate where there's issues arising before it gets, it's a 24-hour operational site, so they can't have total nil supply on the site. And it's just a case of working with them. As I say, some jobs they do themselves, some jobs they will actually come through to us, but it's giving the customer confidence. They've got ownership of their supply, they've got an understanding on it. And obviously, yeah, that it's meeting their budgetary requirements. But as Andy said, we deal with lots. We deal with smaller, just one-off repairs, which is okay. That's fine. That's great. That's resolved that problem. but it's giving the customer support, I suppose. And you might have another large site where the client doesn't actually understand anything on the site. So it's just trying to do that customer services that you're giving the site individual requirements, because each site is completely different.
Exactly. I mean, it is worth pointing out actually when we do have the sort of the smaller side of things where we would probably say that almost like a domestic supply where it's just
Mm.
one 25 mil pipe going into a building, that actually if that is starting to fail, then sometimes that can be the case where the repair is the better option, because the time it would take to dig down and do the repair, the time to actually replace it is pretty, it's not dissimilar, to be brutally honest, and the price isn't that much different. So actually to say to someone, look, we can come and repair it, and we would always offer this, we can come and repair it and it'll cost this, or we can come and renew it and it'll cost that. If you renew it, you're probably securing your supply for the next 50 years without too much of a problem with the sort of the high density pipes that we've got nowadays in plastic. They're less prone to fail like the old cast iron and copper and lead and God knows what else isn't in the ground at different points in the country. But I do think it's like it kind of brings us back to that old adage, which is sort of fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So it's kind of like it does come back to having a plan. This doesn't mean that you need to think, well, I haven't got any problems now, so I'm okay. It's kind of like it's still now the time to look at it and say, well, if something went wrong, what would we do? Um, if it meant that we had to renew our network, what would that look like? How could we break it down into sections? What kind of, sort of estimated ballpark figures does that look like, so that we can build that into a capex rolling project if you're a large company? And that's where it all stems from, and that's what we try to support our customers with. There are absolutely times where it is definitely just a dig down and a repair, because that's what you need. But let's play the long game as well and think, well, even if that is the case now, what happens if it happens again? What's the consequences of that? And would a renewal be a better option? And remember, when we're talking about a renewal, we're not talking about you have to switch your site off for 3 days to do a renewal. Most of the work is done while the old pipe is in place, and then it's just a matter of tying in once 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 we're at that point, and that can be programmed in. And I'm sure Josie will tell you we do work at nights and weekends and whatever works for the customers,
Mm.
factory shutdowns and things. So there's always the opportunity to put those pipes in the ground and get them done with minimal interruption to the supply. But again, it's about planning. It's all about planning, and that's where we come into it. So um, you know Josie's absolutely the person you need to speak to. She is better placed than I ever would be to suggest options on that. And if you've got any questions after this, feel free to contact us we've got an 0800 number, so it's 0800 028 3557. Almost forgot there, option 2, and you'll get through to Josie or Rachel, and they'll be able to talk you through what would be the best way to get this planned in, and what you need to do going forward.
I think just to add, Andy, as well, from a
Yeah,
customer perspective, whether it's a large client or a smaller property, you get a lot of information. If you're putting a new pipe in the ground, there's a lot of information sent out in relation to regulations. Developer services will send you out a whole job pack, whether pipes need to be pressure tested and chlorinated. And it's just a case of Total Water will be there to assist you and guide you. Even if it's a service we don't actually take forward, if you've put in a new pipe in the ground, there's a lot of info to take in, and we just ensure that you're compliant, and the process goes as smoothly as possible for you.
yeah. I mean, Josie's absolutely right. I mean, one of the things, it's probably worth actually giving a little bit of an idea about Total Water Solutions. Actually, so Total Water Solutions is actually the commercial department of Northumbrian Water and Essex and Suffolk Water. So we kind of we have to sit outside of that because we do commercial works for private customers, but we do obviously understand how water companies operate, so we can sometimes give that little bit of insight. And as always, we've got multiple hats because of the way that we work. So we've got our Total Water Solutions hat, which is our day to day, but we're also employees of Northumbrian Water and Essex and Suffolk Water. So um, if you as our customer has a query or isn't 100% certain, you can always give us a call. If we don't know the answer, we'll tell you. If we can point you in the right direction, we will. But we always try and get you to the solution that you want. So I think we've probably done a pretty quick little roundup there around whether or not it's a repair or a renewal. I think the key takeaways, I think, from this sort of conversation are that you need to have a plan in place. You need to understand your site, whether it's small or whether it's huge. You need to understand where water's coming in, what you've got attached to it. You need to understand who are the people who are responsible on your site who have the information, because unfortunately a lot of the time it's in someone's head, and we need to get that down on paper just in case they're not there anymore. And then, if you have a problem, speak to the likes of us, and we'll guide you as best we possibly can on what's going to be the best solution at that point in time. Because Josie's right, it's all depend. Like this is one of the things that we always kind of chuckle about a little bit in the office, because our other side of the business is Legionella management, and that's pretty standard. It's kind of like you need a risk assessment, and then that'll tell you everything you need to do. Whereas for this side of the business, where we deal with pipes in the ground, everything's individual and it's always different. So it's kind of, more often than not, we need to get someone there to go and have a look at it to figure out what the best problem is. But we can normally triage over the phone the initial part of it before we get somebody out there. So don't ever be frightened to give us a call if you don't know the answer to a question. We'll try and find it out for you. And I think that probably rounds us up. It's been a quick one today, but
Yeah,
I'd just like to say thank you for Josie for joining us today and helping us
you're
out.
welcome.
If anybody has any questions, as I say, we've got that 0800 number, which is 0800 028 3557. And if you press option 2, that'll get you through to Josie and Rachel. We also have an email address, tws@nwl.co.uk. And you'll be able to find us on the website or on LinkedIn. So if you've got any questions, you can get in touch with us. That's absolutely fine. And other than that, just a big thank you again for spending some time with us today. We hope you found it useful. There's a little survey on the end, so if the people who have watched today wouldn't mind filling that out, that helps us out a great deal. And other than that, we hope that you don't have a leak or a burst, but if you do, please give us a call. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.